Cancel.
Schweezy.
So I found a really silly show, a show that is so silly, I don't know what to do with myself when I watch the show. It's a little show that you may have heard of. It's a show from Home Box Office, the channel Home Box Office. It's a very old show, very silly though. It's a very silly. Is it a comedy? It's the question I want to be asking you today. So I'm starting a new series where I go over, which I've decided that I'm going to go through each season of The Sopranos. Usually on the show, if I talk about a show or something like that, I'll talk about it, like I'll watch the whole thing and then I'll talk about it. But I thought, hey, what a cool idea that we can go through The Sopranos. I don't know if we're going to be doing this every week. I'm going to finish the season and then have the whole segment about it, you know. Obviously, I think it's what we're doing. But is the show, like, that's a real question for anyone watching The Sopranos. Today, we're going to be going over Sopranos Season 1, but is it supposed to be a silly show? Because it's just silly. And I don't know if it's just actually just a silly show or if we've parodied, you know, Italian mobsters so much in media that just now I'm just giggling every time. Because, like, you know, I think about it as like, okay, maybe they're just goofing on Italians, but like Tony Soprano has to make like a little one-liner comeback for like every, you know, every little thing here. And you're like, you're gonna shoot me in the face. I'm talking to big old Dick Cheney over here. I'm like, is everything like a little joke and a little bit to you guys, you know, in the Mafia? You know? And so, you know, that's been interesting. So I really just want to go into The Sopranos Season 1, talking about that. The main reason I think I finally started this is I've been kind of like a fan of, it's Not Today, Pal. It's Rob Eiler and Jamie Lynn Sigler. They're the kids, Meadow and AJ on The Sopranos, and now they're grown up and they both have like act like real siblings, and like the chemistry is really good with them, so it just like makes it a good show. But I'm watching it for like the kids on the show, but sometimes I think I'm missing the mark with how silly this is. And it's like, I have noticed season 1, I mean, at least with season 1, it's like Tony Soprano is just going around, going on little side adventures, you know, seeing what happens, you know, like little misadventures. The misadventures of Tony Soprano, you know. Anyways, though, let's summarize the season. Did I write this? No, ChatGPT wrote it. The writer's strike is going really cool right now. As if I wouldn't be using this, you know. If you'd like to be an intern, please email me or DM me. I guess you can write this shit. So we're like introduced to Tony Soprano. He's from New Jersey, and he's a mob boss. And is he a mob boss? I think he's like, they call him like captains or whatever, or shit like that. Like, are they really giving out titles like, you're the captain now? Hey, yo, Tony, you're the captain now, and shit like that. Basically, so yeah, it's all from like the point of view of Tony. So like so it's almost as if, is it first person? Honestly, it's like first person / third person. I think it's technically, it's kind of first person for the most part, I want to say. I'm thinking like the Harry Potter books, where like the Harry Potter books are all basically first person from Harry's point of view, which the movies translated really well. Because I think about like that scene where Ron and Hermione go into the Chamber of Secrets to take a fang off of the dead basilisk that's just living there, you know? It was like, should we do something with the dead basilisk down here? No, let's just pretend it doesn't exist. You know, and like in the book, in the Harry Potter books, it's just like you heard Hermione and Ron mention what they did, but in the movie, you got to watch it, you know? This is, we're basically just following Tony for the most part. I think it does trickle away into other people too. But the big thing with Tony, T, or Anthony, whatever you want to call him, listen, T, is that he is having panic / anxiety attacks. I've recently learned that there is a difference. Anxiety attacks are, I believe, triggered by something. whereas panic attacks, they just happen, So when people talk about like, if you're having a panic attack, just don't panic or whatever. I don't know, shit like that. I'm like, well, if it's triggered by something, figure out like, hey, this triggers you. Don't let it trigger you, the other stuff. But I think technically he's having anxiety attacks. A lot of it's triggered. Like he's going to a therapist, and that's really the interesting thing about this show is like Tony's is like a mob boss going to a therapist. Realistically, from what I heard though, from guys who used to be in gangs and stuff like that, is that those guys really can't go to therapy and stuff like that. One, they do mention this in the show, but for the most part, it's like if you like everything stays between you and your therapist unless it's like you're going to hurt yourself or you're planning on hurting others or talk about hurting others. That's like the one time they have to be like, hey man, I'm up. Why did you do that? That's so bad. Don't do that. It's bad. So, he he's going to a therapist, and then, we have all the cast of characters. All the guys in the Mafia, it's going to be hard for me to memorize all of them. I know Paulie, and then Christopher, that's Tony's nephew. Christopher's the fucking dumbass of the group. I kind of have a feeling he's like the Jesse Pinkman of this show. Like I said, I've only watched season 1 so far. I haven't even started on season 2. I told myself, like, you don't get to watch season 2 until you record this. So we're going to see what happens. But Christopher, like, he has Jesse Pinkman vibes, but I feel like Christopher's a little bit smarter than Jesse Pinkman, so I don't know. Maybe compare the two. And then he has his 2 kids, Meadow, Jamie Lynn Sigler, and Rob Eiler is Anthony Jr. AJ, and if you didn't know, the reason why they call him AJ is because he has the same name as his dad, but with Junior involved, and they can't just call him Junior because then there's Uncle Junior, which is like this old guy. And I'm gonna be honest with you, with these New York, New Jersey guys, it's hard to like tell Italians and Jews apart. I'm from the Midwest, but like Italians and Jews, especially from New York, very similar. They're like way too similar. So there's Uncle Junior. I believe everyone's Italian, but I also feel like everyone's also a little there's Jewish characters in the show too. Something I don't get. But Tony's mom's kind of just the worst. Just kind of like, I don't know, because Tony's like, I gotta take care of my mother, and then his mother like puts out a hit to have him killed and shit like that for her being sent to like a retirement community, which isn't even that bad, I have an aunt who lives in a retirement community, and she, I don't know how to speak. I don't want to speak for her today, but she chose to do it. So, and she's doesn't hate it there completely, so it's not too bad. So, so we have all the cast of characters, and it's very interesting because I guess when you think about like mafia crime, you just think of like they're always just like killing people and doing crimes, and their whole life revolves around it. But no, that's the thing is like a lot of these mafia guys, like they keep their home life and their work life very separate, minus like people from work, quotations, coming over, Uncle Paulie, and I don't even know who is and isn't related in this world yet. So I'm trying to figure it out. I think Christopher is Tony's nephew. Uncle Junior, that's his dad's brother. His mom is obviously his mom. But then, yeah, there's just a lot of fucking, there's a lot going on here. And so, yeah, and then basically throughout the show, you kind of have like this rivalry between Uncle Junior and Tony, and Junior. And like they're just kind of like, Junior, you're in charge, but it's like he's not really in charge. We're in charge because like Tony's little crew. I like Tony's little crew because they seem like good. They for mafia guys, they seem like good guys. At least I think they have like their morals in place. Like they don't just I think like a lot of shows I watch, like the violence in it is just violence for being violent. Just like, oh, someone just says something to you that's rude, like kill them. But I feel like with in this show, they only really kill people if it's necessary. They're like, fuck, oh man, I'm sorry, I accidentally killed you, man. So like it's kind of the rivalry between Uncle Junior and Tony, and I think they're like fighting for the top, but not really. But Junior, that's Tony's dad's brother, and becomes good friends with his mom, and his mom is just kind of losing her fucking mind from old age, But so yeah, we wouldn't let her live in her own house by herself, but we'd probably still let her be a politician, create laws for everyone, So but so yeah, and so like you're watching this first season, we're just watching like I like to call this the misadventures of Tony Soprano, and how he interacts with how he balances his life between like his criminal world and like his family life, because he's like taking care of his mom and then stuff like that. But then like for him, work is like we're gonna get some stuff that falls off the back of a truck. Really cool stuff there. So, there's a weird plot where he's like, I'm in love with his therapist, and I'm like, come on. I mean, like, there's a reason I go to like a therapist who is like the age of my mom or older, around there, because I don't know, it's weird. And you're like, oh yeah, they made a weird thing of like, you're going to a chick therapist? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'd rather go to a chick therapist. I'm not going to fucking tell my problems to a guy, like I think therapy is a great thing. I'm in therapy. I do therapy and I think it's great. I think it's good that Tony is in therapy. I'm not saying he shouldn't be. However though, yeah, I don't want to be telling those, things I would say in therapy. I don't want to be telling that to a guy, I don't know. It's just me, It's like getting a massage therapist, like a man massage therapist. I'm like, I don't know. For me, I don't think it feels as good as a one. I don't know, and you're like, massages aren't sexual. Like, it's a little sexual. Like, it's like, it's there, it's there. I don't know. We're not going to get anywhere. But anyways, though, so, it's just the misadventures of teens in the very late 90s. Also, James Gandolfini, I think, when the first season aired, he was 38. But if you know anything about how TV works, is that he was probably I'd guess he was between 35 and 37 when they were filming, stuff like that. I'm like, that dude was old back then, like 38. Like, I have friends who were 38, and they do not look anything like James Gandolfini. James Gandolfini looked 48 in the show, and he looked 10 years older than he actually is. It's like his skin looks pretty smooth, but at the same time, he looks also as old as fuck. The season ends where I guess Uncle Junior and Tony's mom put out a hit on Tony, and Tony survives an assassination attempt. Everyone's like, it's mob, something weird's going on in the Mafia, and then the season ends like Uncle Junior and his posse get arrested, but Tony is still, for some reason, he's good and shit like that, like it's funny. And like and that's the nice thing about I know how the show ends, and which is kind of a bummer because I know that Tony's never going to die throughout the show, but also like the show's about him, so they can't really do a show. I don't know, he might die and come back with magic. I don't know, I haven't watched the other seasons and stuff like that. So like, yeah, he survives an assassination attempt, and it's like, yeah, and that's the thing with these mob stories, if you're going to make another season of it, like how like a mob story should end. It was like they get arrested or they get away with it or they, they escape or something like that, This one just ends like the family eating dinner, and I love it. If you know anything about the ending, it's very similar, the first. And I don't know, it's a very interesting ending. Whenever I get to the finale episode and that final moment, the Sopranos will talk about it more, like very artistic. I probably talked about it a little bit on the Schwegcast whenever I did that show, and even though I still never watched the Sopranos, I just knew how it ended. Because it was a crazy end. It was just very out of nowhere ending. Like, no one expected it to end the way it did, So, hopefully that's an explanation of kind of the events that happened. There are more nitty-gritty details, like Meadow going to a college and they see a guy from the Mafia in a witness protection program who ratted out a bunch of other guys, and so Tony had to kill him, and it shows like this other guy knew Tony was around, almost killed him, but Tony has his daughter with him, so he's like, I'm not going to kill you in front of your daughter, but that was that guy's fatal mistake because Tony killed him anyways because he broke the oath or whatever, So, very interesting, I think very much like Tony is living on borrowed time. He's like, yeah, Tony probably, the way Tony lives his life, he probably shouldn't be alive, like how dangerous of a life he lives, but he keeps living, he keeps living. But like finishing the season though, I've made a lot of observations. One, like I said earlier, the show is way too silly. Like the show, the silliness in the show, and like that's the only word I can really say to describe the show is silly. It's a great show. Like I'm hooked. I'm sitting down watching it. I'm not getting bored watching it. Like the episode ends, you're like, I want to know what happens. I want to know what happens. But it's silly. That's the best way to describe the show. It's silly. It's Italians. It's watching an Italian stereotype. It's like, how like, hey, don't be doing stereotypes. It's bad. But then you make an entire show of just stereotypes. But we're like, we're not trying to be funny. And then you're always fucking making jokes. Shit like that. But here's the big thing I've realized. Big thing I realized about myself watching the show. Because realistically, it all has to come back to me. I think I could be really good friends with guys in the Mafia, especially like the older guys. Younger guys can get a little too violent and a little like if someone's like, none of these guys, in the Mafia, all the old friends of Tony, like Paulie and Tony and Pussy, like really, there's a guy named Pussy on the show. There's a guy named Pussy. You're just gonna call him that. How do you like just with a serious phrase like, yeah, I'm gonna go over to Pussy's house later and talk to him for a minute. And you're like, okay. It's like, it's a funny joke for a minute, but like actually calling this dude, and then Pussy's just like, yeah, man, that's my name. Just call me Pussy. Like don't do that. But like Paulie and Tony, like they're not generally like violent human beings. You meet those people who are just like very violent. Like if you accidentally annoy them, they like push you slightly or whatever. You're like, oh, when you get upset, the first thing you go to is violence, and those are not good people to be around. Like those are genuine people you want to avoid in life. Like if they get angry, their first thought is violence, and I know some people think that, and you were just, we were all raised wrong. Like, so you just got to work out like, hey, when you get angry, don't use violence, go through your emotions and, process it, but I could be great friends with those guys in the Mafia. One, I think the biggest thing is, I would not ask them for money or not really go into business with them, that'd be the big thing, because when people have problems with the Mafia, it's because they owe them money, I can help them out. One of the guys are like, we're assuming that like I'm not known for being friends with with these guys, like, and stuff like that, because there's one part in the season where Tony's like goes to his neighbor who was kind of like, I don't know, like he went out golfing with him and his friends kind of demeaned him. He was like, what's the Mafia like? It's like, it's more than, Tony doesn't want to be defined by his job or whatever, and stuff like that. And then he's just like, hey, I need you to hold on to this for me. It was like a box. I can't even remember what was inside of it. He's like, how long? He's like, a month, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. If I know a guy's in the Mafia and he's like, hey, I need you to hold on to this, I'm like, okay. And I will literally not open it. I'm just like, you know what? Curiosity kills a cat. I'm aware. I'm not gonna bother with it. So what I'm gonna do, find a good hiding spot for it, keep it in the hiding spot, and then just not think about it. Listen around. If you think the cops are gonna search your house or whatever, hide it somewhere else. I would do that. Like, look, man, if this keeps the peace. But it's also like a weird thing because apparently guys in the Mafia, they'll give you gifts and it's like questionable what you're supposed to do when given gifts from someone in the Mafia, because realistically you're just like, oh, hey man, thank you. This is really nice of you. Thank you so much for it. And then the Mafia guys will be like, you owe us. And I want your restaurant to be where I murder people. And I'm like, oh. Because, like, you don't mind the Mafia doing their Mafia stuff. You just don't want to be involved with it. And, and from what it sounds like with, like, Tony and Paulie and the other guys, it's just kind of like, if you're not in business with them, they're okay with not talking about work, Like, apparently, we hear about kids who are like, oh, if you had your parents, like, who just did crimes and shit like that, if you asked them what job they did, they would just be like, funny you, They give you a little runaround and just goofy shit like that, you know. And so like yeah, if you find the Mafia guys who aren't just like outwardly violent, who solve all their problems with violence, like I think I could be good friends with them. And like, look, man, I think about like movies or whatever where like a crime is happening where someone gets hurt or something like that, but then like a maid walks in and accidentally sees it, and like, fuck, now we have to kill the maid. I'm gonna be honest with you. If I see a crime going on, I'm ignoring that shit. I just recently heard because Danny Masterson's in the news for being a piece of shit, and like apparently one time a woman was murdered by another guy, but Ashton Kutcher apparently walked in and saw her dead body and they just kind of walked away. And he told the police that what happened was he went to the door, rang the doorbell, knocked on the door, looked through the windows, and didn't see anything and left. Which I mean, like, he didn't murder her, but like he didn't tell the truth there either. I'm like, if I saw a crime happening, I'm just gonna leave. And I'm like, look, I didn't see anything. You know what? Like, why would I talk? Because like I don't like the police either. Like I probably hate the police more than I hate Mafia guys. So I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking talk to them. If I see a crime, if like I walk in on a crime happening, I'm like, didn't see anything. I just walk away. I'm like, I didn't see anything. Like I don't understand how people are like, oh, I'm gonna tell the police. I'm like, no. Look, the options are either keep your mouth shut or they kill you. And if I don't want to die that day, some days I do, it's called mental health, folks. I'm in therapy. But yeah, I'm like, I didn't see anything. This sounds like more of a problem. And that's what, if like someone has a heart attack or whatever, you're like, or like you need to call 911 for them. You're like, I mean, like I want them to be safe, but I kind of just want to call 911, wait for 911 to get there and then just leave, I don't want to like stay there. Like they need a statement from the police. Everyone needs to know what happened, Like I don't want to do that. I just want to help them and then I want to leave, So anyways, though, if you're in the Mafia and looking for some friends, I'd be a great friend. Like I said, I don't really want to ruin our friendship by adding business to it. But honestly, I did think of something. So as a music producer, as I am, it's not uncommon. I don't know how big it is, big of a thing it is anymore, but it's not uncommon, especially back in the day when getting studio time was a lot of money. Basically, when you hear about record deals, just a fun fact, someone's like, oh, I got a $10 million record deal. What that means is they didn't like get $10 million or whatever, or whatever you think. What happens is a record company is giving you that as a loan as the artist to make the album, and then the idea behind that is that you're going to make an album, the record company's going to sell it, and so you have your loan, and obviously once you sell so X amount of copies of your album or music or whatever, and after you pay back the loan, you get to keep that profit. So since record labels are just basically loan sharks for musicians, some people have gone to the Mafia for movies and stuff like that. Now, what I would do is I would find an artist who's looking for funding, tell them to meet with my friend Tony. Tony gives them a loan to make the album. I get paid from that money for my, hard work and, my work ethic and just, good, making money the old-fashioned way, the good way. But I know that money comes from the Mafia, and the artist would have to pay off the Mafia. It wouldn't be my problem. So I'd probably do that. That'd be the sleaziest thing I would do. But also, albums don't cost that much to make anymore. So, like in 1999 when this show came out, especially I think they talk about it a lot from like the 60s onward. I think there's one guy that's the Jew in the show. I guess he works with the Mafia, but it's a record label too, and it's not super uncommon to have Mafia. Because I mean, like if it's just because getting records done is like taking a loan, doing this shit. That's why everyone does it at home now. It's like, oh, if I buy a guitar myself, mod it to make it sound like, a really just amazing guitar that you get at a studio, it's no big deal. All that music stuff is interesting to me. The music stuff, the Tonian therapy, all stuff that's super relatable to me. But I do want to say one thing, and I'm going to end my season 1 synopsis. Could the Mafia, I like the idea of organized crime, but I don't like the violence, Violence as in just murdering people. I feel like we could do organized crime without violence. I'm like super, let's the woke mafia, coming at you. And it's like, we do organized crime, but we don't hurt people. And honestly, though, killing someone, you may be afraid of death. I don't know. It's a dark thought in my mind, but like torture, like, and making someone suffer, I feel like you get more satisfaction than just like killing someone. Once they're dead, it's like, why did I get this revenge while they killed someone else? I'm like, oh, that person's not back alive. But like, if you torture them, you're gonna get that satisfaction. At least what I think. I've never tortured anyone before. Not like realistically. I've like hung things over people's heads. And those are also just to make me laugh, not to actually like be mean to someone. Anyways. But anyways, though, The Sopranos, very good start. A lot of times you watch a show, you're like, okay, the first season's a little rough. You got to get through it. But then it gets really good. Like, season 1 of The Sopranos was really good. I don't know if there's a bad season or a good season. I haven't really gone into like a wiki or browsed Reddit on everyone's thoughts on The Sopranos. But overall, I'm liking it so far. I got to get into season 2. I'm going to watch that. And I will return with all my thoughts there. Thank you for watching this clip.